first I had this type of denial or something about what COVID was or how it could, devastate me, because I've never been that sick.
And one day in Hebrew school, I was like, oh, I think I'm falling in love with Judaism. And it made just sense to me the same way when I realized I was trans.
We've been captured by the forces of things like white supremacy and colonialism and, patriarchy, and that's not who we want to be. That's not who Jesus was.
Thanks so much for joining us. You're watching LGBT, Healthcare and Me, a presentation sponsored by Minnesota Department of Health. I'm Todd Michael Barnes. Our topic today, a Twin Cities popular opinion leader and former Prince protege shares his harrowing experience with COVID-19 and what it was like battling the potentially life-threatening coronavirus. We'll hear from legendary David TC Ellis in just a moment. And in part 2 of our special series, Faith, Religion, and Spirituality in LGBT communities, Where Are We Now? We pick up where we left off with the Enzi Tanner Story, a tale of courage and strength. Today we learn about the Judaism gift of Enzi's story, about how an African-American born-again Christian lesbian female transitioned to become an African-American, Jewish, transgender male. And coming up, we hear from the former Exodus International member who was told you can pray the gay away. And we talk to Twin Cities Reverend Jane McBride about what it was like in the past and what it's like now inside the church for persons who are LGBT. And later, our Pink Power panel, they get their own theme song, their own new logo, and their own new Pink Power pad. All this and more on this episode of LGBT, Healthcare and Me. But first, LGBTQ health-related headlines begin right now. Minnesota Governor Walz announced the state's COVID-19 community vaccination site at Mall of America is expanding its hours and capacity. The Bloomington site will now have the capacity to administer 500 doses per day and will be expanding its daily hours. Governor Tim Walz also announced the launch of a new program offering $100 on-site incentives for COVID-19 vaccines at community vaccination clinics around the state. Nearly 50 community coordinators and community clinics will offer Visa gift cards, grocery store vouchers, Target gift cards, or culturally specific food items. The new incentive program comes after August, when nearly 80,000 Minnesotans received their first dose of vaccine and a $100 Visa gift card, as well as more than 3,100 persons who got their shot and a $100 gift card at the Minnesota State Fair. In just a moment, the Aliveness Project gives out free PrEP. Bloomington, Minnesota holds its first Pride celebration, and a Utah school district bans LGBTQ and Black Lives Matter flags. But first, you're watching LGBT, Healthcare and Me. David TC Ellis is a Twin Cities popular opinion leader, hip-hop music pioneer, and a giant in local and national education communities. However, recently, the award-winning education and music innovator was almost stopped in his tracks by a stone-cold giant killer, the Delta variant of COVID-19. David Ellis, founder of High School for Recording Arts, who also goes by the name TC, is known for his tenacious energy, feisty spirit, staying power, and strength. Ellis, a former Prince protege, who was the first hip-hop artist to record under Prince's music label, has for the last 30 years taken his celebrity status and love of the music business and parlayed it into successfully educating 350 students each year at High School for Recording Arts, located in St. Paul.
I was kind of feeding into the hype a little bit, and I didn't get my vaccine. I'm on my way. I'm going to take my son out of town to visit with his mother, and I felt kind of chills on the plane. And I was like, whoa. You know, I asked him, I said, are you guys chilly? They were like, no, they had on short sleeve shirts and they were just chatting and talking, and I couldn't get comfortable in my seat. I started feeling this fatigue, and I didn't know what it was. I didn't think COVID at the time. And so when I got where we were going, I dropped him off, and I took some NyQuil and went to bed. And I woke up the next day and bam, I was just floored.
Ellis then went and got tested for COVID-19 and waited for the results.
I just felt terrible. And I kind of, at that point, I was like, I think I got it, because my back was hurting, all my muscles were sore. I had a headache. I couldn't get comfortable, and I was just kind of feeling real bad. The doctor, he told me, he said, just move forward as if you have it.
But recently, even Ellis's usual strength wasn't a match for the power of the Delta variant, because when Ellis became infected with the virus, he hadn't received the COVID-19 vaccine.
And then eventually the test came back and said I had the Delta variant. And so I was like, whoa.
In addition to becoming infected with the Delta variant, the popular school leader had a double whammy. His older brother by 14 years also came down with COVID-19, most likely becoming infected at the same event. But unlike David, his older brother was vaccinated.
He had the vaccine, I didn't. His lasted like 3 days. Mine's lasted over 3 weeks. After that third week, I was like so devastated that I was just like, what the heck, you know? I fooled around, I didn't get my vaccine, and then I was in contact with my older brother. He was checking on me every day, and he's 14 years older than me, and he was like all the way better. And I was like, man, I should have got my vaccine, you know, because I had other friends who were you know, doctors and people who were telling me you should get it, you know, it ain't what it was in history, you know, where, you know, they're trying to feed us something. He's saying this is something that will protect you or help to protect you.
We asked Ellis why he hadn't got the COVID-19 vaccine before becoming infected with the life-threatening virus.
Being that I've never participated in getting a flu shot or any other vaccines. And so I just guess I had this type of denial or something about what COVID was or how it could, you know, devastate me, because I've never been that sick. I didn't take it as serious as I should have, and I got my butt kicked. I just didn't realize. And then you got, you know, the historical factors, you got all this conspiracy theory stuff, you got all these things. And you know, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor, I'm just an ordinary black man trying to make it.
Now the school leader, who in part got his start from Prince, has some royal advice of his own.
All I can tell you is get that shot.
And when asked what he would say to African Americans and others still hesitant to get the COVID-19 shot because of historical reasons,
get that vaccine, because from my experience and what I understand, it helps. My brother had it and his lasted 1/10 of the time mine did. I say, from where I'm sitting now, get the vaccine. You know, I had to learn the hard way, you know, and you know, it made me really think about where I was at in life, and that, hey, you could pass.
Todd Barnes reporting. For more information on where you or a loved one can get the COVID-19 vaccine, visit the Vaccine Connector at the website listed below. The Aliveness Project has announced Minnesota residents can now receive free pre-exposure prophylaxis, or PrEP, the daily pill used to lower the risk of contracting HIV. Now, daily PrEP use can reduce the risk of contracting HIV from having sex by more than 99% among people who inject drugs. PrEP reduces the risk of contracting HIV by more than 74%. The Aliveness Project invites individuals with or without prescription drug insurance coverage. All medications, clinic visits, and lab tests are fully covered by the Aliveness Project. The city of Bloomington, Minnesota, held its first Pride event Saturday, August 14th, on the east lawn of Bloomington Civic Plaza. Mayor Tim Bussey told KARE 11, "For the last 3 years, we've actually had a booth down at Pride in Minneapolis. One of the most common and recurring questions I got from folks was, well, when is Bloomington going to host their own Pride celebration?" And the answer is, this year. The mayor added, "We're walking the walk, and we're also talking the talk. We're getting the work done that needs to get done to make Bloomington a welcoming community." The mayor told KARE 11 he hopes to make this an annual event. Fox 13 in Salt Lake City is reporting the school district in Davis County, Utah, is banning Black Lives Matter flags and LGBTQ flags because the Davis School District believes these flags are too politically charged and therefore will not allow them on school grounds. More on this story in weeks to come. NBC Out reported President Joe Biden commemorated the 10-year anniversary of the end of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, a policy enacted by President Clinton that required LGBTQ persons serving in the military to remain closeted, to hide their true identities. It's estimated the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy caused 13,000 service members to be discharged during the 17-year enactment. Now, President Barack Obama signed a repeal bill in December 2010, but the policy wasn't officially gone until September 20th, 2011. Later, Pink Power panel member Wendell Ward introduces us to his entrepreneurial endeavor and passion of the heart. Plus, coming up, our Pink Power panel, favorites of our show, get a new theme song, a new logo, and a new Pink Power pad. But first, the continuation of the Enzi Tanner Story, followed by a discussion with Twin Cities Reverend Jane McBride, Principal Minister at First Congregational Church of Minnesota. Every now and again, in rare circumstances, we meet somebody we want to call a hero, somebody we want to call special, but the person insists they're just like you and me, which then makes them seem even more like a hero, even more special. Today, we continue the story of Enzi Tanner, a person some call hero, some call special, and some even call a unicorn, but a person who Enzi calls Enzi. And now, the continuation of the Enzi Tanner story. Like so much of Enzi's story, he starts out in one place and ends up in another. Last episode, we learned Enzi started out as a black, born-again Christian lesbian who now identifies as a black, Jewish, transgender male. We learned he started out listening to the dangerous messages of Donnie McClurkin, messages that say you can pray the gay away, and then ended up in the largest Christian gay conversion therapy racket in the world, Exodus International. Enzi started out attending a Southern Bible college and ended up torn between two worlds when he'd leave the Bible college he attended to secretly travel to the big city at night where he and his friends would hit the clubs. And that's where we pick up with the conclusion of Enzi's story today, beginning with when he attended a Black Pride event as a Christian pastor and ending up a practicing Jew.
I preached a sermon for Black Pride about, I think maybe 2011. And a friend of mine, who is now a rabbi, was there with me and then invited me to go to services with them. And I was like, okay. And so when I started going to the synagogue that I belong to now, Shatikva, I was actually going as a Christian pastor. And one day in Hebrew school, I was like, oh, I think I'm falling in love with Judaism. And it made just sense to me the same way when I realized I was trans.
To Enzi, Judaism is special for many reasons, but first and foremost, Enzi talks about how Judaism places a premium on service and connecting with others.
As a Jewish person, it is about actions. It is about what I do and how I live my life. And so for me, I don't really care as much about what's going to happen in the afterlife. I'm constantly asking, how can I alleviate pain and suffering today for the person next to me?
Enzi understands Judaism isn't without its flaws.
Like anything, Judaism isn't perfect, but it is my home. It is my family. It is the place that I find substance and resonance in.
Enzi credits Judaism for an immense amount of personal and spiritual growth.
In many ways, to be able to explore and examine who I am and how I am in my most authentic self. And for me, I think Judaism allows me to do that in some very real ways.
And just how are places of worship and temples doing when it comes to addressing issues of trans or LGBTQ persons?
And we're really good with gender identity, but there's still work to do, right? There's, I would imagine that in most synagogues, if a person walked in, they're not going to find a gender neutral bathroom, which I hope that that's the case, that that's not the case, because we've been closed down for 18 months plus now. And so there's been opportunities to change that. So I would say that there's an attempt to do better. There's an attempt to figure out what is the next step, and how do we be in presence and practice with each other.
Would LGBT folks find that most temples we walked into, at least here in the United States, are going to be that open, welcoming, and affirming? Or is your temple an aberration or the norm within Judaism today?
Yeah, I don't want to say it's the norm, because there is no such thing as a norm, right? I hesitate to say this, because I think about if in the same way as if most people go to a barbecue with Black folks, will there be watermelon? Maybe, right? But maybe not. And so I would say that there are movements that I'm a part of the Reform movement. And so more folks in Reform are going to be more accepting, but that's not always the case. And even my community, which I love, and it is seen as a queer synagogue, there's lots of work to do around gender identity. In some ways, COVID connected me back to my spiritual community in ways that I hadn't expected.
And are you vaccinated or not vaccinated?
I am vaccinated. Thank you for asking that question. No, I am vaccinated, and that's a complex thing, because early on I was like, I thought I would know more people who are vaccinated, and I'm mindful that in the Black community that I don't know more people who are vaccinated, as well as mindful that with these COVID part 2 is how we were calling it on the call I was on yesterday, that more people in my life are not vaccinated. And I will name that, even though this is about LGBT stuff, I will name that one of the things I realized this week is the Tuskegee experiment was much more insidious than we thought, because it didn't end there. Thousands of Black folks are dying because they refuse to get vaccinated because of the history of medical trauma in the United States. And for me, that has just been, I'm just naming that because it's just been so painful to watch people I know get sick, as well as to watch people who I love watch their family die. And I thought we were done with that last year, and that's not the case. So,
as we started the story last episode, Enzi Tanner insists he isn't a unicorn.
One of the things that we started during this time, and maybe it's because no one is in person, so everyone is doing things, over Zoom, but we have a Black trans Torah club right now. So it's just Black trans Jewish folks studying Torah together, and it's, and that's why I say I'm not that special, right? Because I have these identities that people may see as a quote unquote unicorn, and also are aware that I am in company with a lot of other people who are not that much different from me. I'm not the only Black trans Jewish person in the Twin Cities.
Todd Barnes reporting. Today we conclude our faith, religion, and spirituality interview with Reverend Jane McBride, Principal Minister of First Congregational Church of Minnesota, a part of United Church of Christ. Reverend McBride talks about her own experiences as an LGBTQ person growing up, coming up, and being in the church.
Well, I grew up inside the church for sure. My father is also a United Church of Christ pastor. And, you know, I'm in my mid-40s now. When I was younger, I didn't have a lot of, I just didn't have a lot of information about the LGBTQ community or where I might be in that community. And so, of course, it's been kind of a long process to come out and figure out who I am and how I fit in with church. And at the same time, I would say I've always experienced a deep sense of welcome and embrace within the church. This denomination that I'm part of, the United Church of Christ, is known for being one of the most progressive Protestant denominations. And, you know, there are bumps along the road with that, and certainly we all have things to learn and ways that we need to grow. And the church has been growing a lot, I think, over my lifetime.
When it comes to faith, religion, and spirituality, Human Rights Campaign suggests we listen to what Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount when he talked about good trees bearing good fruit and bad trees bearing bad fruit.
Gay folks, we have straight folks, we have transgender folks, we have folks who identify as, you know, non-binary, and we just have a lot of people who, I don't know, aren't part of the LGBTQ community.
The United Methodist Church, with an estimated 10.4 million members, has current policies that are strongly against the LGBT community. However, many church leaders, including local pastors, welcome gays and lesbians as members and support our human rights.
In the 1970s, the church ordained our first openly gay man, and that was very controversial and very difficult for the church. There was a lot of debate about that. And certainly there are still congregations within the United Church of Christ who wouldn't call a gay pastor. We have the ability to decide for ourselves whether or not that's right. And so some congregations aren't comfortable with that, so they don't do that.
The Episcopal Church is welcoming to the LGBTQ community, unlike the Anglican Church of which it is a part. The Episcopal Church does not condemn homosexuality.
You know, I have a lot of LGBTQ colleagues, and I have a lot of straight colleagues, and, you know, it's really kind of a non-issue.
The Universal Fellowship of Metropolitan Community Churches is the largest Christian organization dedicated to outreach to LGBTQ persons, with an estimated 23,000 members nationwide.
I think there, in my mind, churches in this era kind of run the gambit, and there's really a deep divide within Christianity. And I would say, this is a huge generalization, but I would say on one side of that is the more progressive Christian movement, which embraces a lot of different denominations and includes, you know, evangelicals. It's kind of a big tent. But basically, I think those are people who are really looking at the last couple of centuries and saying, wow, you know, we have really been captured by the forces of things like white supremacy and colonialism and, you know, patriarchy, and that's not who we want to be. That's not who Jesus was, and we need to reimagine ourselves.
More than 1 billion Muslims inhabit the planet, and they inhabit geographic, linguistic, and cultural spaces that are enormously diverse. And as a result, their beliefs on LGBTQ people cannot be easily summarized.
So I think that's more the movement I'm part of. But I think there's another version of Christianity that's trying to cling on to, some of that stuff that I see as destructive, and just really kind of digging in their heels and saying, no, we're not going to become more inclusive. We're not trying to build community with people who don't think like us or don't look like us, or that's not why we're here. That's hard to say, because I think I would like to be a bridge builder. I would like to reach out to those who don't see Christianity the way I do, and cooperate. And at the same time, that feels like a big hurdle.
Todd Barnes reporting. This episode, our Pink Power panel has a new theme song, a new logo, and a new Pink Power pad. Right now, our Pink Power panel closes out our special series by telling us how their faith, religious, or spiritual lives have been impacted by COVID-19. How has faith, religion, or spirituality impacted you during COVID-19?
So I think that there is something that went missing due to the pandemic, due to COVID-19, due to everything being shut down. And I think that it's just important for us to remember, when one plug-in source goes out, to rely on another one, create a new one, find something that also feeds you. It's really a challenge to make us not dependent on one thing. The parts that I need, they're out there. It's just up for me to go and find them.
I guess for me, the same thing Monse said. It was different going from going to church every Sunday to not having church to watching church on Facebook Live. For me, my spirituality was impacted greatly because I wasn't able to go to my meetings that I attend every week. I find those to be very spiritually enlightening for me, and a place where I can grow in my own personal development and my life. And to have those taken away by COVID was very impactful. I know we're not out of the woods yet with COVID, but some things have come back to in person, and I really appreciate that. Church and meetings are back in person. So for me, that's a sign that things are getting better, and it's been a notice in my own life.
For me is that I haven't really been going to churches for a while. So it hasn't really affected me in a sense to that in that extent. For me, my church is, as it says, like in certain scriptures, 3 people in agreement, that's church. And for me, that's kind of like how I've been dealing with certain things, with different people that believe in God and believe in the Creator. Some of the churches that's around here, it's different things that's going on that's hard to understand. But for me, with the COVID and everything being shut down, it actually got me more into internet church, and more into watching Dietrich Haddon's services, and many other pastors' services, and different deacons and things like that start doing what I would say prophetic speaking, or motivational type, like Joel Osteen in a sense. But these are different churches. It's like, but now they're closed. The church is closed. Now they're on internet. So for me, I've kind of gotten to tap into that, and then just meeting people like Joe and Moses and Trishan, having faith has been the church for me within the 3 of us. We may not have had a time where we sat and read the Bible together, but the fact that they believe and we all have the same thing, we want everything to be good for everyone, is matching up enough for me. And so for me, within this, the situation what we're doing right now has been good when it comes to this COVID thing and religion and meeting other people that actually believe in God.
I agree with what Monse was saying. With COVID and religion and the faith, with going to online, that was very challenging. It was difficult. I also agree with what Wendell said as well. It allowed me a chance to explore some other, other churches, other people, but it still was a challenge. And then moving into going back into the church, once things let up a little bit, it still was different because we weren't able to have physical touch still. We still had to have our mask on and we couldn't do praise and worship. So it still was a challenge. It still is a challenge. We still haven't quite moved all the way forward, but we are, I can appreciate where we are.
Wendell Ward brings it each episode on the Pink Power Panel and also brings it in other areas of his life. Wendell Ward, popularly known as WOW, helps us here at ENN put our own walk with the talk by introducing us to today's LGBTQ success story, where we celebrate LGBTQ stories of triumph and hope. Meet the entrepreneur, our own LGBTQ success story in today's spotlight, Wendell Ward.
So my business that I do, and I am WOW, by the way, and what we do here is an organization where we help with getting food to families and different basic needs to families. And the name of that organization is Feeding the Dream. I'm very proud of it. It helps get people, kids, food, family, food. You know, nobody should have to starve or just be hungry, or, you know, kids suffering in the neighborhood from the, in the area where Frogtown is. It's in a spot where it's very low income. So it's not a lot of food opportunities for people like that in that area, and especially for like fresh stuff and things like that. So it's been, Feeding the Dream has been like a gift from a lot of different work, different collaborators. St. Stephen's Church, St. Paul Fellowship Church has helped with collaborating with this organization. So this is one of the organizational things that I do. It's just too much stuff out here, too much food that's being wasted, thrown away every night at restaurants and things like that. So it's just, for us, it's about fun, sharing, trading recipes, teaching each other how to use certain vegetables to make it yummy for the kids and things like that. So it's about love and family, and just trying to and sharing and being helpful, and it's in community, if you get what I'm saying. Community is like, when I say community, a lot of the people in the community just be walking past and be like, what's going on here? What's going on? Well, I would like to help. I got a few minutes before I have to get on the train to go to work. And they will stop and literally help volunteer and help set up the tables, separate bag fruit and everything like that. So it's like, it's been a blessing to see how the community can come together just without it being even forced. You can find that site either on Facebook or even on like Google. You can just look it up, but it's used all lowercase, feedingthedream.org.
Thank you to our special guest and our Pink Power Panel. Remember, if you or a loved one still needs to get the COVID-19 vaccine, visit the Vaccine Connector at the website address listed below. Today we concluded our series on faith, religion, and spirituality, but what we really talked about, just the same as every week, what we really discussed were the issues of respect and unconditional love. That concludes this episode of LGBT, Healthcare and Me. Thank you to the Minnesota Department of Health. Remember, LGBTQI persons and our allies, you are not alone. You can find us 24/7 at our website, www.equitynewsnetwork.com, or in St. Paul on Comcast channels 14, 15, 16, and 19, or on YouTube at our Todd Barnes Reporting channel. And when you visit, don't forget to smash that like button and hit subscribe. Until our next episode, and until we meet again, it's my hope we dish up some respect and lean in toward love. For all of us at ENN, Todd Barnes reporting.